Alright, we're going to get started with this logo project. So we're going to be focusing on the shape tools, which are found over here. The default shape is the rectangle. If you click and hold on that, you have some more tools here that we'll go over in just a second. So to get started, we're going to start a new file, and we're going to change the project to be in inches. So the default might be in pixels. We're going to change that to inches. It's going to be 6 inches by 6 inches. And then the resolution is going to be 300 pixels per inch, or dots per inch. So 300. And that is just the standard that we'll use in class. Just commit that to memory. And then we're going to just click create. We have one layer over here on the right, which is the background layer, which is simply just a white background. And we're going to get started with just a little bit of review of what we did last week. We're going to focus on just the basic tools here. So first thing you want to notice is once you change your tools, no matter what tool you're on, there's going to be different options that appear up here. So for the shape tool, there's a specific menu of different options up here that we'll go over. So the first thing we're going to create is just a simple rectangle. So I'm just going to go ahead and click to create a rectangle. So that's a click to start the rectangle. You're holding the click button down and dragging away to expand the rectangle. And then releasing creates the shape. So now I have two new shape layers. So the first thing you'll probably want to modify is the color. So depending on which shape layer is selected, if you're on a shape layer, you're going to be editing that shape layer. So if I change it, it's going to change the color for that layer. If I want to change a different layer, I would have to select it first, be on the shape tool, and then change the color. So if I now move, let's say I wanted to move this rectangle, so now I'm going to go to the move tool and just click on it and move it around. Notice I'm on the move tool options, so I can't change the color until I go back to the shape tool to get the same options that I need to change the color. So let's say these colors aren't any that I want to use. I want to create a different color. Let's say I want an orange color. I'm going to click on this current color, and now I have an infinite amount of choices. So first thing you want to do is play around with the rainbow and get the right shade of colors in that box. So I want some orange options here. And I'm going to click around. If I want a bright orange, I'm going to go over here. Let's change it to be a little bit more yellowish. I'm not getting the right orange that I want. Let's go to deep oranges. Here we go. Here's some orange. And then click OK once you've found the color that you want. So that's as simple as that. To change the colors, to create a rectangle. Now let's change the shape. Let's go to the ellipse tool. So to change it, again, you just kind of click and hold for a second over the tool, and it brings up the other tools that are hidden underneath. So let's switch to the ellipse tool. Right now I'm set to create a new layer, so if I click and hold and drag away, I'm going to be creating a new ellipse layer. So the ellipse is like an oval shape. Let's say I wanted a perfect circle. If you want a perfect circle, you're going to need to add a modifier key, the shift key. So I'll click to start, and you can see it's not a perfect circle. I'll hold the shift key down and then move my mouse just slightly, and now it's forcing it to be a perfect circle. So the height and the width are the same as I stretch it out. And then release the mouse and then the shift key to create the circle. So now we've created two basic shapes, a rectangle and a circle. If you wanted a square, you would hold down the shift key while you're making your rectangle, and it would make a perfect square. Alright, moving on, we have the option to make a line. And the first thing you'll want to change is the width. So if it's set down to like 4 pixels, it's not going to be very big because the resolution of our image is quite high. So at 5 pixels is a pretty slim, thin line. So if you wanted a longer line or a thicker line, you would change this to be more pixels. Let's say you wanted to create a perfectly straight horizontal line. As you're using this tool, you want to hold down the Shift key. That will force it to be perfectly horizontal, or in 90-degree increments you can change it to be perfectly 90 degrees diagonal or perfectly aligned vertically. Then you can kind of go around like the hands of a clock depending on what angle you want to use. So the Shift key kind of locks it into a specific angle. That way you can line up your lines perfectly. Alright, so the next tool, so that's just basically, a line is basically a rectangle that is elongated. So it's just a really elongated rectangle. The next thing is the parametric shapes. So you can create a shape with a various number of sides. So right now it's set to 5 sides. So create a shape that has 5 sides. And that is something that once it's created you can't change. So even though I'm on that shape and I've changed the number of sides, it's not modifying the shape. So you want to make sure that you select the amount of sides that you want first. Say I want an 8-sided shape. Now I can create my shape. Let's say I want it perfectly. See, if I rotate it, it could be off vertically. So again, you can hold the Shift key down as you're creating the shape. Oh, it's not locking in. So this is one you have to be kind of careful with, aligning it before you release. I'm sure there's some ways that you can align it afterwards, but I'm going to release to make it. Within this, you have the option to create either a polygon, which is what we have, so it has like facets, straight lines, or you could create a star. So let me just create it so you can see what that looks like. So it's the same number, had 8 sides. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 little pointy things now. So the options within that is the inner radius, which is the distance from the inside point from the center. That's the inner radius. The so you could force that to be, like if you wanted really shallow points, you could increase that. Now it's really shallow. You can't even really tell it's a star. Let me go a little bit less than that. There you go. Or if you really increase it, they'll be really, really pointy. Decrease it, sorry. So the radius is closer to the center. Alright, and then if you wanted the points to be slightly, rounded, you could change this. So let's go ahead and change this setting. So now it has rounded points or rounded corners if you are using the polygon tool. See, the edges, the corners are rounded. So we've gone through quite a few of these options up here. The custom shape gives a library of shapes, and sometimes it takes a little while to load. But here you can create any number of shapes that they have here in the library. So let's just say I wanted to create this music note symbol here. So you choose the shape and then you drag it out. So this is kind of like cheating. We're not going to use these custom shapes for your logos. I want you to create your own shapes, but this is what that last shape option is. Alright, so now I have a ton of shape layers, and I'm just going to go ahead and delete them. So if you create a layer you want to get rid of, you simply need to select it and then press the backspace. Or if you have a delete key, you could also use that. But on our Chromebooks, we have a backspace. If you want to delete multiple or edit multiple things, you can hold the shift key down, select the first layer that you want to edit, hold the shift key down, and then select the last layer that you want to edit. And in that way I can just press delete and get rid of multiple layers at the same time. If the layers aren't touching that you want to select, let's say I want to get rid of shape number 5 and shape number 8. So I'm going to select shape 8, and now I can hold the control key down, so it's just below the shift key, control, and then select shape 5, and then I can select more shapes if I want to, and then delete those. I'm just going to get rid of all of my shapes, so we can start over again. Alright, so that's the basic way to create shapes. So now we're going to get into some more advanced shapes or custom shapes. You can customize any number of shapes and have them interact with each other if you want to. So to illustrate that, I'm going to create this, or try to at least create this Adidas logo. So you can see in here there's this pointy oval shape. And then basically if I can create one of these, which I'm going to call a leaf, it's kind of the shape of a leaf. If I can create one of these, then I could duplicate it and then just rotate one this way and rotate the other one the other way. Then I need to figure out how to create some shapes to make these stripes appear. So that is my goal, and we're going to use some various shape tools to create that. I'll show you one way. So if you wanted to create an oval or an ellipse that is similar in shape, you'd select the ellipse tool, and I'm going to create my ellipse and make an elongated oval. So you can see that's similar but not quite. So what I need to do is make the ends pointy. So right now this is every shape is defined by a path, and the path is just a container for the shape. The path has no thickness to it. It's invisible. It's just a mathematical container for the color to be inside. So if I wanted to edit this path, I would need to go to this path tools. So I have a path select tool, and if I click and hold, I have a direct select tool. So the path select tool allows me to select multiple paths or entire paths. So if I click on the border, I see an outline of the path, which is the container for this elongated oval. If I want to modify this, I need to go to the direct select tool. Now if I click on something, a point, I get these curious looking things that appear. I'm going to zoom in so I can kind of focus in on. So you have an anchor point, and then you have these little handles. And I like to describe a handle as like a gravitational pull. So the end of the handle, the little dot there, has a gravitational pull that's pulling the edge of the path towards it. So if I change the direction of this or extend it, it's going to pull that edge out. If I change the angle, it's going to change the angle of the gravitational pull. It's going to pull it in that direction. I'm going to undo that. So there you have some handles and an anchor point. This anchor point can either be, let me just go to this, which is what I wanted to show you. If you search Photopea path or editing paths, you'll get this page, which is very helpful in the description of how the paths work. So you can select a path, and we're in the direct. We are selecting individual points. So we are in the direct select section here. So what you can do is change to manipulate knots within a shape. You click the outline of the path to see the knots, which we've done. And you can click on a knot or hold shift to select multiple knots, and even select separate knots from different paths. When one or more knots are selected, we can move them with a mouse or cursor key, delete them by pressing delete, move the anchor or handles of a knot. Double-clicking the handle will collapse it. When a handle is collapsed, double-clicking the anchor will give it back. Otherwise, double-clicking the anchor will convert the linked smooth knot to unlinked corner knot, and vice versa. So we're going to go over this in just a second, but this smooth versus corner knot is important, and there's another illustration here that, let's see, I think it's here. Yep. Here is an example of a linked knot. So the knot is the center part, and then this is unlinked, so each of these handles acts independently. So in our drawing here, these handles can collapse. If you collapse both of them, then it's going to make a corner. So if I collapse a handle, you double click the handle itself. So I'm going to double click here. Now that smooth has turned into an edge. It's no longer curved. So if I want to get that back, I would then have to double click the center. Now I've got it back. Now this is a smooth transition. These handles are linked together. So if I change the angle of one, it's like a teeter-totter. They're connected. So it creates a smooth transition from one edge past the knot to the other. It's like a smooth line there. If I wanted it to be different, so I wanted one curve to be different from the other, so not so perfectly smooth, I can unlink these two, so I can edit one at a time. To do that, I would double click the knot itself. The knot is the center part. So I'm going to double click that. Now it changed from a circle to a square, which means it's now unlinked. Now if I go to edit a handle, I can edit just one side, and I can do whatever I'd like to. And then the other one is also independent. So go ahead and I'll undo those steps. And again, if I wanted to completely get rid of these handles, I wanted a corner instead of a rounded transition here, I can get rid of both handles. So if I double click each side, I'll get a perfect point. So that is one way that I can get the result that I'm looking for in the Adidas logo. So I have an oval here that has a rounded, smooth transition. All I need to do is get rid of the handles to make it a point. So there I have my shape. I'm going to go ahead and do something different. a different method to create the same shape. So instead of considering this to be, one shape, I'm going to use two circles to create the same result. So basically, if you think about it, if this is the outer edge of one circle and this is the outer edge of another circle, this represents kind of like the intersection of two circles, two edges of two circles. So let's try that method to create the same shape. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my shape layer. Let me go ahead and zoom out. I need a little more space for this one. And what I'm going to do is create two circles. Create my first circle. Hold the shift key down so I can make sure that it's perfectly circle. So the height and the width is the same. And then my next circle, I want it to be the exact same size. And I want to combine the two. So what I have here is a shape which is a path that is filled with a color. That's what a circle is, or any kind of shape. So I want to select the path so I can see the path. So I'm going to go to my path select tool. And then sometimes a little tricky to actually click on it, but it's right on the edge of the shape there. So with that selected, I can now duplicate this path. So I'm going to now go to Edit and copy the path. The reason I'm copying it is because I want to have two circles that are exactly the same size. It'd be really hard to perfectly remake this circle the exact same size. So I'm going to copy the path, which will give me the same exact size as the current circle. So I have that path copied. I'm going to go to Edit again and just select Paste. So now I have two different paths. So now I'm in the Path Select tool, and I can see that my path is filled with a color. And you didn't see this happen because they're right on top of each other. But now I have path 2. I had path 1 before, and now I have path 2. So if I move this away, I'm going to just click on it and hold. Whoops. I'm moving both. I just want to move one. I think I'm moving the shape. Let's go to the Move tool here. Let me figure out if this is going to work real quick. So I have the Path Select tool. Let me select this. I have multiple paths right on the top of each other. Let me try this again. Oh, there we go. Somehow I just clicked on it and moved it. So now I have path 2 selected, and then I have path 1 selected. Let me go ahead and try to go back. If I line them up perfectly, we'll go over this in just a second. So I have two different shapes now in one shape layer. Let me go back to my layers. So shape 1 now has two paths in it. They're both filled with a color, and they're both set to unite. So unite is basically, it's overlapping shapes, they just overlap. So, and the order does matter. Let's see if I can change the fill color of one of these. No, because it's a shape layer, it's always going to be one color. Alright, so next thing I want to cover is the structure of paths. So union, like we have done here, two paths will create, if they're in the union setting, will create one combined shape. Now if you set one of those paths to subtract, it's going to take a bite out of the other shape. Intersect will keep the fill color in the area that is intersecting. So two shapes that intersect, anything outside of that intersection will not have any fill, just the inside of the intersection. Exclude is the opposite of intersect. So where they overlap, there would be no fill color, and then anywhere outside of that intersection would be filled in with a color. So what we're trying to do now is intersect the two circles together. Alright, so I'm going to change one of these to intersect. So I have the path selected. I'm still in the path select tool. I'm going to change it. Instead of unite, I'm going to go to intersect. So that forces the first one, the first path, to only retain the color in the intersection of the second path. So they're interacting together. So here is what I wanted to do. So I'm getting the result that I wanted. I wanted this kind of shape here. So depending on where the shape is, it could be either thicker or thinner, but I get the same result. Now if my circles are slightly off, then my leaf is going to be at an angle. And I want to make sure to start with that these paths are aligned. So I want to select both of them, and let's see if I can move. Make sure that they are aligned together. Align bottom edges. Oh, I have to have multiple layers selected. So that doesn't work with paths. So we're going to have to use something different to align these. So let's go ahead and, I got both of them. Let's go back to that path select tool. And let me just select one path. So I'm going to choose something to align it with. So here we have the horizontal reference for my project. That is at perfectly 3 inches. Let me enable the rulers just so I can see that. So this should be, and then I'm going to right click the ruler and display it in inches. So here's the 3-inch mark. So that circle is now aligned with the 3-inch mark. Now I'm going to align this one the same mark. So that gives you a screen tip when it's aligned perfectly horizontally. So now if I wanted to move this over and make sure that I'm now aligned perfectly with the other one, if I want to make sure that it stays that way, I can hold the shift key down, which will force it to move only horizontally. Oh, that's vertical. Let me move horizontally. There we go. So I'm just trying to reference the Adidas logo, the thickness of that leaf. So about right there would be good. So now these two shapes are intersecting and creating the shape that I want to create. So now it's not quite large enough. So now I want to actually edit the entire shape. So I'm going to move from the path select to the move tool. Within the move tool you have some other options. At the top you have auto select, which will select whatever shape that your cursor is pointed at. It will select that layer, which can be convenient, but it can also not be convenient if you have too many overlapping shapes and you're trying to select one and it's selecting a different one. But for now I'm going to leave that enabled. Transform controls is something that I usually have on all the time. It's very helpful unless these bounding boxes become a visual distraction for you. I would recommend leaving the transform controls on. And then another helpful thing is distances. And this can be very visually distracting. So if that gets to be annoying to you and you don't really care about distances, you can turn that off. But for now we're going to leave it enabled. Alright, so now I have a path selected. I'm going to deselect that by going to the Paths tab and just clicking anywhere in the gray area. I'm going to select my shape. Now I can modify this. You can see both the outlines of my paths, but the shape itself, the shape layer, is here. So I'm going to now click on the corner to increase the size. And as I do that, I want to make sure that I'm retaining the height to width ratio so that I'm not modifying my paths to be different from circles. So as I'm changing the size, I'm also going to hold the Shift key down. That forces it to retain the ratio of height to width as I'm scaling it up. So I'm going to go ahead and scale it up to about right there. So now I'm done scaling. I'm going to click the check mark to accept that. And now I'm going to select the background just so that I can see my result and turn off the distances. So here's my shape. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out one more level. So I want to start off by centering this shape. I'm going to click on it, and once I get to the center, it's going to give me that nice red line. The next thing I want to do is create a duplicate of this, and then I'm going to rotate it. So to create a duplicate, you can do two things. One is right-click the shape layer, or whatever layer you want to duplicate, and then select from the list Duplicate Layer. That's one option. The other option is to use a shortcut, which is Control J. So that gives you a copy of your current layer that's selected. So either way will work. I like to use the shortcut just because it's faster. So now I have a shape and a copy of my shape, and they're overlapping. Now I want to rotate the duplicate, so I'm going to hover over the corner and you get a little rotate symbol. So I'm going to go ahead and start rotating. As soon as I start rotating, it changes to the transform menu here at the top, and I can see the degree of rotation. So I'm going to just rotate it until it looks like what I'm trying to get at here, which is this logo. So it's a pretty significant rotation. I don't know if it's completely 45 degrees, but we'll set it to that and see. So that would be 45 degrees, and if you want to do an exact measurement, you can type it in. 45, enter. And now I'm just going to grab it by clicking on it and place it, and compare that to the other logo I'm trying to duplicate. That looks close enough for me. I'm just going to leave it there for now. So I have 2 of the 3 leaves that I need to create. The next one I could either duplicate, I could go through the same process, or I could simply duplicate the layer. So I'm going to duplicate this just because it's quicker. So I'm going to do Control J, and this one needs to be flipped to be on the other side. So I'm going to go to the Edit menu, go to the Transform options, and I want to flip vertically. So now I have the correct orientation. I'm going to place that over here. So now I have 3 shapes, the leaves that I'm looking for. And if you want to fine-tune the placement, you can use your arrow keys. So once you have a shape selected, you can use your arrow keys to nudge the shape over left or right. And I'm just aligning these visually. That looks good enough to me. So the last step that I want to do is add the stripes. And to do this, I'm just going to add 1 stripe, and then you'll know how to add the other stripes. So for this, I'm going to attempt, I don't think I can merge these shapes to do this. So we're going to need to leave them separate. So what I want to do next is create, I have 2 paths, and this is an intersection relationship. The next thing I want to do is create something that removes a stripe from the shape. So I'm going to create a rectangle, because that's the shape that I want to use to remove. And instead of creating a shape, I'm going to create a path, because this is not going to have any kind of fill color to it. I'm going to use it to subtract from the current shape. So now I'm going to draw a rectangle, but I'm going to draw it large enough to stretch across all 3 of these shapes. So I'm going to start over here and then release when I'm on the other side. So now that path is interacting with the shape and subtracting. That's exactly what I want to have happen. So I want that to be a little bit lower than it is now. So we can edit the path. I'm just using my arrow key to nudge it down. And so it's interacting with the current shape that I have selected, but I want to also take the same stripe out of the other 2 shape layers. So what I'm going to do is copy this path and then paste it in the other 2 shapes. So to select the path, I need to go back to that path select tool and then select my path. I accidentally selected the circle and moved it a little bit, so I'm going to do Control Z. So I want to make sure that I'm on the correct path. I'm going to click here to select the rectangle. So that is the only path that I have selected. I'm going to go to Edit and now Copy. Now I want to paste this rectangle into the other 2 shapes. So I'll select this shape first, go to Edit, and then Paste. So now that path is interacting with 2 different shapes. Then I'll copy it to the 3rd shape, Edit, Paste. There you can see I have a shape here that is interacting with all, or the path is interacting with all the 3 shapes. To create multiple stripes, I could paste another version of this same path and then nudge it down. So I'm going to now just do Edit, Paste, and then use my arrow key to drop that down. So now I have my 2nd stripe. Then I would then copy this new stripe, Edit, Copy, and then go to the other 2 shapes, Edit, Paste, and then the last shape, Edit, Paste. So now I have 2 stripes. Let me select the background so you can see. Now I didn't, exactly measure out exactly where these stripes needed to be, but you would want to do that before you copy and paste to the different layers so that you get the correct placement for all of the stripes if you're trying to recreate this. So let's move on. Next thing we're going to do is the target logo, which it seems very simple, but to get the result you need to really line up the circles, so we're going to go through that. So I'm going to go ahead and just select all these and delete. And go in, we're going to be obviously using the circle tool, and I'm going to go ahead and create shape, and let's start with the larger red shape. So I'm going to go ahead and create my circle. So I'm going to hold the shift key down to make sure that it's a perfect circle. And I'm paying attention to the size. So let's say I wanted to create a 3-inch circle, releasing right at 3 inches. So there's a way to view that. If you have the layer selected and go to the Move tool, and you have distances set, you can see the height and the width set to 3. Then you can also see the distance from the sides. So what we're going to be doing is aligning it perfectly in the center. So you can see there it kind of snapped horizontally to line up and vertically to line up. Now I can see with the measurements that it's perfectly in the center. So I have a 3-inch circle that is aligned perfectly in the center of my workspace. This is going to be helpful. The next thing I want to do is create, let's go back to that. So I want to create this white circle that's in the middle. So next thing I'm going to do is select the background, because I don't want to add to this shape. I want to create a new shape, and I want to be able to change the color. So I'm going to go to the Shape tool, go to the Fill color, and change it to white. I'm still on the Ellipse tool, and I want to create a perfect circle. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down while I'm making my circle. And the relative size I'm not sure yet, so I'm just going to, let's do 1.5 inch. No, let's do 2 inches. Or roundabouts 2 inches. Now my shape is below the first shape that I created, and it's on a white background. So let me hide that. I'm hiding the background so now I can see the transparency behind it. So here's my white circle. It's hiding behind the red circle. So the placement of your shapes is very important. Anything that is on the bottom is going to be hidden by any shapes that are overlapping on the top. So I need to change the order. So I'm going to grab this layer and just simply move it to the top of the order. Now it's on top where it should be, and I need to now just place it. I'm going to align it in the center, just like that. The last thing I want to do is I could create a third circle that is red, but instead of doing that, what I want to do is create a donut. So I'm going to cut a hole in the center of this white circle with a path. So let me go ahead and go to the Shape tool, and it is an ellipse, but instead of creating a shape, I want to create a path, and I want this to subtract from the current shape. So I have shape 2 selected. So now when I draw this circle, it's going to subtract from the other circle. So I'm going to click out here somewhere just to start it. Make sure I hold the Shift key down to create a perfect circle. And I'm just going to guess it's about 1 inch. And then release. So now the placement is in the wrong place. So it's cutting out of the side of the circle instead of the center. So I need to use my Path Select tool to move the path into the center. So this doesn't give as good reference horizontal and vertical. Like you don't get the red lines, but it does snap. So it has snapped horizontally and vertically. So that's perfectly in the center. I'm going to release my mouse. So now I have two shape layers. One of them is a simple red circle. And if I hide it, you can see the other layer is a donut, a white donut in the center. So those are two simple ways to use shapes and paths to cut and create different shapes using multiple paths interacting together. Alright, next I want to draw your attention to a neat little tool that I found online. Whoops. So what I found is some of you are struggling to find a logo. And there's a logo creator app that's online. So if I go to, I think it's logo.com. And I went ahead and just created an imaginary business. I have a taco truck. My business name is, no, I think it's Spicy Taco. Then it says enter your slogan, and my slogan is "We Gots the Hots." So with this app, this online app, it has generated some logo ideas based on the text that I have, and I can increase the number of keywords or choose some of these suggestions here. And it has generated several logos. This is just something that you can use for inspiration. So as I scroll down through here, there's some really creative ones that I like. So if you're not sure what to use for your logo, like what you should draw, you can use this website. It's simply called logo.com to find some inspiration. And there's one in here that I really liked that had like a jalapeno. I think it was this one here. That was a little bit more complicated. But here's a good example. So let's say I wanted my logo to simply be like a jalapeno or some sort of spicy, thingy. What are those called? You know what I'm talking about. So that I'm going to use that as my inspiration and create a custom shape. So go ahead and get rid of these two shapes. I'm going to start off with a different tool. This pen tool is a really cool thing to learn how to use, and I will encourage you to spend some time on this. I'm going to demonstrate kind of quickly how to use it, and then you can play around with the tool and kind of get familiar with how to create shapes with it. So the pen tool is a click to place like these are knots. So as I click, I'm placing a knot, and I can create my shape simply by clicking and creating straight lines. So I've created a shape. I'll go ahead and delete that. Let's say I want a shape that has rounded edges. If you click and hold, you can drag out handles, where, like I was talking about before, these have a gravitational pull. So as you're creating your knots, if you drag out handles, it's going to create a curved line instead of straight lines. Then if I'm done creating curved lines and I want to go back to straight lines, instead of holding and creating handles, I would just click. create more straight lines. And the beauty of the pen tool is you can go in afterwards and edit all of these points. So now I can go into the direct select tool. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. And I can grab any of these points and move them around, or I can grab a handle and change the angle. So let's say if my goal was to make it like a hot pepper, I can elongate that, grab this, take it down here, use this one to kind of create a curve, grab this one here, pull that one in. That's a handle. Let's go ahead and grab that. And then right here on the end, this for some reason is not pulling that side. So this handle here is a straight line. So if I want to create handles, I would double click the anchor point, and there I have some handles. Zoom out here. So you can see now I'm starting to create my hot pepper. I started off with a very different shape. So just by editing these different knots, I'm creating my pepper. So that's one way to create it, is using the pen tool. Now there's a different option within the pen tool, is to do a free pen. This is where you would just start freehand drawing. So some of you may be better than others at drawing with the mouse. I am really bad at it. So let me go ahead and delete my shape here, and I'll try to freehand draw my pepper. So let's go ahead and do this. There you go. So there's the shape. I want to create a new shape for the top, and I'm just going to create like a little stem here. So there's my pepper, and like I said, if I don't like any of this, I can go in and use the direct select tool. Let me zoom in so you can see what's going on here, and I can smooth out any of this stuff and make it look better. So this created a lot of points as I was drawing. So I have a lot of options to choose from to make it better. I'm just kind of playing around and moving things around until I get something that I like. So say I want this stem to be skinnier. There you go. Same thing with the pepper. I can select that and then select the points on here if I want to edit those. So again, the spacebar is the hand tool, which allows you to pan your workspace. So if you, whatever tool you're in, press the spacebar in order to grab your workspace and move around. And then the zoom is control and spacebar. That zooms in. If you want to do the alternate, you add the alt key, which zooms out. So I'm just zooming in and out, playing around with my shape here. So you want to be careful. It's kind of hard to determine what is a handle and what is a knot. So you might have to zoom in so you can really see what's going on. There's the handle and there's the knot. There's the handles and there's the knot. Some of these are almost overlapping. So you get the idea. So there's my pepper, and let's say I want the stem to be a different color, so I can select that and select a shade of green. Let's go with something like that. And let's say I really wanted to change this to kind of make it more dynamic. I can make a gradient color instead of a solid color. So I'm going to change the fill type to a gradient. Right now it's going to be just plain black to white, which is definitely not what I want. So to edit that, now I'm going to click on the gradient color, the current gradient colors. That brings up a separate window. And now I'm going to go to the first color, which is the black. So I'll click on that. And I'm going to select the color itself in this box. And this will allow me to select whatever color I want to. So let's say on the bottom I want it to be like a deep orange. Oh, let's do a light orange maybe. And then at the top, which would be the white color, I want that to be like a deep dark red. Alright, click OK to accept the color. And I have my gradient set correctly, so I have the colors that I want. So I'm going to click OK. But it's fading from left to right, and I want it to go up to down, kind of following the direction of the pepper. So I need to go to the fill options, and since it's set to gradient, I have some options here. I want to for sure change the angle. So I want to go at the angle that the pepper's at, so about like right there. So now you can already see that it's going from the top of the pepper to the bottom of the pepper. And then these things here, the scale, is how large the transition is. So if I want a really short transition, I would decrease the scale. If I want a longer transition, I would increase the scale. So I'm just trying to get something that looks interesting there. But then the off is the direction. You can offset, so the transition happens more at the top or at the bottom. So let me show you by decreasing the scale what I'm doing here. So if I offset the X, it's going up or down. Offsetting the Y is not going to do much. I guess it is because it is slightly angled. So depending on what these settings are, you can offset the transition to be more on one end or the other end of the gradient. Increase the scale here. So there I have my hot pepper that I could use for my taco truck logo. And the last thing I would need to do is add some text. So your logos don't have to be super involved. I'm giving you some simple ideas. But if they are involved, hopefully you've learned a few skills that you can at least start the process of creating your logos. And as always, I will be glad to help you if you have any questions, or if you'd like to explore any other techniques that we haven't gone over yet and you want to challenge yourself in that way. But the most important thing is play around with the different tools that we're learning. Once you've created an idea for your logo, figure out what method might work best for you. Maybe you're creating, simple shapes that interact together, or maybe you're doing a lot of freehand and then manipulating with the path select options to kind of fine-tune your images or your shapes. All right, have fun.